upside down like papers on some scandal shit. If I told you the truth, could you handle it? Or etched it in the window of a train like a vandal did? Illuminate the darkness like a candle lit and turn lives upside down like papers on some scandal shit.
So this is 1666, folks. This is what it looked like back then. Back in the 1600 whatever, 1666 time, when the Great Fire of London was on. And you had acts and statues getting made in Parliament that people seem to think was made while the fire was on. Well, it wasn't. It was made about 5 months later, but that's not really what I'm here to discuss. I'm here to discuss the meaning, what it actually means, and how these freemen of the land, freetards we call them, have totally misinterpreted, as normal, badly educated, misinterpreted it completely of what it actually means. But this is what you were living in back in them days. Horses, no internet, obviously. No MSN, no media. There wasn't really newspapers then. There was nothing, there was gossip. That's all there was. And nothing more. The information flow there was non-existent. Between neighbours, streets, nothing else. Let's delve into this Cestui Que Vie, whatever the fuck it is, act. It starts off French, by the way. It's a French meaning. It means that person. That person. That's what it means in French. So here, our first one to look at, who thinks the old Freeman of the Land Cestui Que Vie Act meaning. Let's see what he thinks here. See what he says.
Now, the Cestui Que Vie Trust was set up for people that were lost at sea, and it's in maritime. What does that mean? Well, if somebody is lost at sea for more than 7 years, they're essentially declared as bankrupt, and their estate immediately goes into probate, and trustees appointed to oversee that lost at sea, that person lost at sea. The way that you come out of being lost at sea is that you have to be a live-life claimant, which essentially means that two people have to witness that you are no longer lost at sea or dead at sea, and then of course your estate will be given back to you. Because the people that have created this mechanism really used it to...
So basically what he's saying is, lost at sea, and the only way to get out of that is to, within the 7 years, claim you're alive. Okay. Even though that claim was done when you were born, was it not, with a birth certificate? Yes, maritime law, we can go down that road all you like, you dick, but you were claimed to be alive already on your date of birth when you were born, alright? Let's look at another idiot.
But here's another 666. In the year 1666 in London, during the Black Plague, the Great Fires of London, Parliament enacted an act behind closed doors called the Cestui Que Vie Act 1666. The act being debated, the Cestui Que Act was to subrogate the rights of men and women, meaning all men and women were declared dead, lost at sea, beyond the sea.
Nowhere in that act does it say that all men and women are declared dead. Nowhere.
Then operating in Admiralty law, the law of the sea. So they were basically considered to be lost at sea.
So what you're saying is, once the act came out, This is the most conspiracy. This is what they all think, the freemen of the land, freetards as I call them. They all think that this Cestui Que Vie Act, Cestui Que Vie Act 1666, that person act is what I'll call it. They seem to think that the government and the state take over all your belongings from the day you're born to from your 7th-year-old birthday onwards. If you don't declare you're alive within the 7 years of your birth, then the state take all your belongings. That's basically what they say. That's why the state and the government own everything that they say, right? And you can't act against them because they own it all. That's their main claim. It's actual bullshit. It's absolutely bollocks. The Cestui Que Vie Act itself does not state anywhere in the act that you're all dead, right? What it states is when you're lost at sea, which means back in them days in the 1600s, it means you're missing. You're missing. And back in these days, look, there was nothing to, you couldn't phone 999. There was no fucking 999. There wasn't these services that we take for granted today. It wasn't around back then. Look at how they were dressing, for fuck's sake. I mean, they're pansing around in these fucking leather and haberdashery and fucking outfits and what have you. Different world to today. For these people, him, where's the other guy gone? And him, and others, there's plenty of them out there, think that you need a live life claim to cancel out the Cestui Que Vie Act. It's absolute rubbish. The truth about the Cestui Que Vie Act. Let's read this together, because this is the truth, folks. You know, I'm going to stick it on my blog. So obviously you've got a Freedom of Information Act you can follow, which I've got here. I do have that, Freedom of Information Act. There it is. So a guy simply asked us to crack with the Cestui Que Vie Act, you know. Can you explain it all, blah de fucking blah. Now, years ago, luckily for me, my mum was a solicitor, so I was lucky enough to speak to an actual barrister. And the first thing I asked him was, what is this act? And he explained to me, very simple. Very, very simple. And to be honest, whoever this woman is, what's her name? Sarah Price, whoever she is. She explained it very well as well. It may help you to know that the Cestui Que Vie Acts of 66 and 1707 were concerned the presumption of death in certain circumstances. So, if you're missing, if you have to be reported missing in the first place to be presumed dead, you know, or something has to happen because you got a birth certificate, you're alive from the day you were born. That's what you registered for, to say hello, we're alive. Okay, so you don't need none of this 7-year shit. What you're on about? Live life claim. Your live life claim is your birth certificate. You're alive. Hello. Anyway, redresses inconveniences by want of proof of the ceases beyond persons beyond the seas, absenting themselves. Basically, when people went overseas and didn't come back, then they were presumed lost at sea. Missing is the modern terminology. Missing. So, what this act actually does is prevent fraud. Ironically, it prevents fraud from happening. It prevents you from saying that I'm dead, knowing that after 7 years can come back and we can live off the insurance, we can live off the mortgage being paid for us, because everyone thinks I'm dead. So to get rid of all this, it was the Cestui Que Vie Act 1660, and they've amended it since plenty of times. 1850 I think was the last time they did it. And it was actually used. It was actually used in a court case. I'll show you on where it is. Let me just go and get it for you. Okay, here it is. The canoe couple. You probably remember. Some remember this. Some remember this back in the day. So we had the canoe couple. Didn't turn up at a shift. 2002, reported missing. That was him. Reported missing. She reported him missing. Now it turns out, if he was dead, happening here? If he was dead, right, then they would have got all the insurance money and the mortgage paid. Here you go, look, it says it all here. Let's see if I can get that zoomed in a bit. And that's what happened. And they brought that in the actual court. They brought the Cestui Que Vie Act up. It was actually working against them. It was actually brought to its real purpose to show that he returned within 7 years, and they brought it back and they used it against him in that court case right there. Okay, so it's not as if it doesn't exist. It does exist, of course. It's there for fraud. That's why it's there. Go back to the blog that I was reading, which is very good. So, needless to say, the interpretation of the Cestui Que Vie Act is a balderdash, I agree. While it is a presumption of death statute, it's nowhere near as sweeping a conspiracy theorists imagine. Quite correct. According to the Act's preamble, there have been situations where tenants for life went aboard and effectively disappeared, causing headaches for the landlord and any revisioners, unless they could prove that the tenant was actually dead, which would be a tall over given the limits of long-distance communication, which I've mentioned. This state would be struck into legal limbo, and that's what happened. They'd just be in legal limbo. So to avoid these problems, the Act allowed life tenants to be declared dead if they went missing overseas for more than 7 years. And that's what the Act states. The landlord of the revisionaries could then launch an action to recover the estate, i.e. the person, because back then there was no mortgages. You had no mortgages back then. You couldn't buy land and buy houses. You had to be given it. You need to look up your history. So Lord such and such or Lord Cunty Bollocks could fucking then recover the house off you. Okay? And or the spouse or wherever. There is no act. Nothing in that act declares anyone in the United Kingdom is dead. Nothing in that act whatsoever. They claim that it was passed during the Great Fire of London, which it wasn't. It was actually after. So it's September 66 is when the fire happened. In February 67 is when it was actually assessed into the Parliament, actually put into court and put into Parliament and had a discussion through it. So that's a good 5 months after, as the man says here. So your Cestui Que Vie Act just needs to be interpreted and understood a lot better. You know, it's very similar to this one, in fact. Where is it? Consent of the governed. And you've all heard about that. Consent of the governed. I'm going to let a child tell you what this means, the consent of the governed, because you all misinterpreted that act as well. And John Harris and a lot of other people in the past, is why they misinterpreted it. They had a following on YouTube, so you all misinterpreted it. Simple as that. Get legal advice, proper legal advice. Listen to fucking YouTube and Google. Anyway, what was I playing? Listen to this young girl tell you what consent of the governed means, and this is exactly what it means.
What does consent of the governed mean? It is the idea that the people willingly grant power to their fellow citizens to govern a nation. Thus, the government receives all its power from the people. Without it...
And that's it. That's it in a nutshell, folks. That's what consent of the governed means. Can't make it any clearer than that.
What does consent of the governed mean? It is the idea that the people willingly grant power to their fellow citizens.
So we grant power by democracy, by voting these people in. We give them our consent right there. We don't need to stand at fucking Parliament. We don't need to stand out there in all the demos saying I do not consent, because it doesn't mean fuck all. Doesn't mean shite in this today's society. We voted for that government. We give them consent. You might not have. Well, didums. Bottom line is, democracy won.
To govern a nation. Thus, the government receives all its power from the people. Without it, the government cannot exist.
Exactly. Now, without it, the government couldn't exist. It wouldn't work for the people, would it? We have to give the government its consent, or our consent. And the way we do it is through democratic voting. Simple as that. It's not by you standing there and saying I don't consent, or I do consent, or I understand, or I do not understand, I will not stand over. All bollocks. All absolute bullshit. Didn't even work back in 1600s, never mind fucking today. Never going to work. So you need to get out of this shit. Freeman of the land. Fuck me. I don't consent and Cestui Que Vie Act. Man, dickheads. A lot of you dickheads for even thinking that way. Just bad education is all I can say. It's really, you must have been staring out the windows or playing off school. Running around or in people's fucking houses smoking the chong and that. Instead of going to school. Because at school they taught me this shit. Why you lot fucking didn't take it in, I don't know.
Illuminate the darkness like a candle and turn life